Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The door didn't slam. Clicked. Soft. Precise. Almost delicate, like someone trying not to wake the dead. Too bad I was already wide awake, sitting in complete darkness, listening. She thought I was asleep. I heard her keys drop into the ceramic bowl by the door, the one I made in college when I still thought handmade things meant something. I heard the soft shuffle of her coat sliding off, the fake laugh she let out while texting someone back, and then silence. For a moment, I thought she'd walk past me without a word. I was sitting on the floor in the hallway like a damn ghost, hoodie pulled over my head, heart thumping in my ears. She finally spoke, and I'll never forget it. "Why aren't you sleeping?" A pause. Then that cruel smirk in her voice. I already got the attention I needed. That was it. No guilt. No apology. Just a confession soaked in mockery. I didn't say anything at first. I stood up slowly, like every joint in my body had rusted over. I didn't even look at her as I stepped around the corner, grabbed the suitcase I'd been packing since 9:30 p.m., and placed it at her feet like a gift. "I packed your things," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Take them and head back." She didn't move. I watched her eyes flick to the suitcase, then to me, and I swear, for one perfect second I saw fear. Not regret, not sadness, just the cold realization that the man she thought would always stay silent wasn't silent anymore. Her mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. She wasn't used to consequences. That's when my phone buzzed. A single message on the lock screen, from someone I wasn't supposed to hear from, and everything unraveled. Her stare was still frozen when I pulled the phone from my pocket. I hadn't planned to check it in front of her. It just buzzed, and my fingers moved on their own. The name that flashed across the screen wasn't someone I expected. Vince. Not my friend. Not my coworker. Not even my acquaintance. Vince was her boss. The one she swore she couldn't stand. The one whose name she used to roll her eyes at whenever I asked about late meetings or last-minute deadlines. And now, at 12:09 a.m., Vince was texting me. "Just make sure she gets her coat back. It's in my truck." Long night. That was it. That simple. That brutal. I didn't show her the screen. I didn't have to. I just stared at the message like it was a photograph of a funeral I'd forgotten I attended. I could feel her watching me. Tense now, nervous, lips parting like she was about to explain. But explain what? What exactly do you say after that? "I don't know why he texted you," she finally muttered, crossing her arms like she was shielding herself from the truth. "Maybe he meant to text someone else." I laughed. It wasn't a funny laugh. It was hollow, cracked, like something dry snapping in half. "Your coat," I said. "It's in his truck?" She stepped back, just one small step, but it was enough to make me realize this wasn't the first time. The way her face contorted wasn't shock. It was calculation. She was trying to find a lie fast enough to catch up to the truth. "You're twisting this," she snapped. "Why are you making everything worse than it is?" That's when I lost it. Not yelling, not breaking anything. Just the quietest kind of fury. The one that fills your throat and makes your words come out in whispers because shouting would mean you still cared enough to argue. "I sat here for 3 hours," I said slowly, replaying every moment of the past 6 months, wondering if I was paranoid, or insecure, or just broken. "And now you're standing here, half laughing, like this is some misunderstanding?" She looked at the suitcase like it might save her. "I'll sleep on the couch," she said suddenly. "We'll talk in the morning." I stepped in front of the couch. "No," I said. "You'll go now. You can't kick me out of my own house," she spat. I almost said our house. Almost. But I stopped myself. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew. I'd lost her long before tonight. This place wasn't ours anymore. It was a stage for her lies and my silence. "Your coat's in his truck," I said again, quieter now. "Go get it. And don't come back without the truth." Her face dropped. And then, she reached for the suitcase. Not a word. No fight. No tears. Just quiet acceptance that her secret wasn't secret anymore. She left through the same door she crept in from. No slam. Just that soft, deliberate click. But the silence she left behind? That was louder than anything she could have said. I didn't move for a while after the door shut. The silence in the house felt heavier now, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, unsure if they should collapse or just echo the truth I had finally let in. I sat back down in the hallway. Same spot, same posture, like I hadn't just kicked my wife out at midnight with a suitcase and a shattered lie she hadn't even tried hard to fix. My phone was still in my hand, the screen now dark. But the message lingered in my head like a ghost. It's in my truck. Long night. That smug tone didn't need to be typed out. I could feel it. Vince knew. Vince was confident. Vince probably thought I'd never see that message, or worse, that I wouldn't do anything even if I did. And for the longest time that was true. But something cracked wide open in me tonight, and now I couldn't ignore it. I got up slowly and walked to the kitchen, needing water, or maybe just something cold to remind me I was still standing. That's when I saw it, her keys. Not the house keys. Not the car key either. It was a small, unfamiliar silver key on a plain ring. Something I'd never seen before. It was sitting right beside her empty wine glass on the counter like she had tossed it down without thinking. I picked it up, and as soon as I did, I noticed something else. A folded receipt, wedged between the fruit bowl and her journal. A receipt from a gas station in a town 30 minutes away. Timestamp: 11:41 p.m. Her sister's house was in the opposite direction. My hands started to shake again, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming realization that there were more lies buried under the ones I'd already uncovered. She hadn't just gone to Vince's place. She'd planned for this. She'd built a little web and assumed I'd never look too closely at the threads. I opened her journal. I know, that sounds terrible. Like I was crossing some invisible line, even though she'd already stepped miles past everyone that ever mattered. But I wasn't looking for poetry or feelings. I was looking for names, codes, anything, and I found it. Page after page, nothing stood out. But near the back, scribbled like an afterthought, was a list. 3 names, 2 addresses, and next to one of them a tiny heart. That name wasn't Vince. It wasn't anyone I recognized. I took a photo of the page, dropped the journal back where I found it, and stared at that silver key like it was a weapon. Because maybe it was. Maybe it opened more than a lock. Maybe it opened a truth I hadn't even started to guess it yet. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. At 3:17 a.m. she tried calling. Twice. I let it ring. Then I blocked the number. If she wanted to talk, she could knock. She could stand on the porch and face the man she thought would always forgive. But when she came back, because I knew she would, it wouldn't be to the same house or the same husband. And she wouldn't like what I had waiting. By sunrise, I had gone from shaking to strangely calm. There's a numbness that sets in after the initial shock wears off, a kind of eerie stillness where your brain stops spiraling and starts calculating. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't even angry in the traditional sense. I just needed answers. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her to give them to me. That unfamiliar key weighed heavier in my pocket than it should have. I kept turning it between my fingers, convinced it was nothing, trying to talk myself out of the spiral. Maybe it opened a locker, or a box, or, my least favorite possibility, someone else's apartment. The idea made my stomach twist. And yet, deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. I waited until 8:15 a.m. Then I drove. The receipt had listed a gas station in a small neighboring town. Nothing fancy. Just one of those off-highway places with a rundown coffee counter and bathrooms that should come with a warning label. I pulled into the lot, parked, and walked inside. My hands were sweating, even though the October air had a sharp chill. "Excuse me?" I asked the cashier. A woman maybe in her late 50s with tired eyes and a badge that said Cheryl. "Do you have any rental boxes or storage units connected to this place?" She gave me a long, curious look. "We do out back." "Why?" I held up the key. "Just checking something." I could tell she didn't trust me, but she shrugged and pointed. "Units are numbered. You either got the right one or you don't." I walked behind the building, my shoes crunching over gravel. The row of storage units wasn't long. Maybe 15 total, but each one was padlocked and rusted like it hadn't been touched in years. Except one. Unit 9. This lock was newer. Not shiny, but definitely more recent than the others. My pulse jumped. I took out the key, heart pounding. It slid into the lock. Turned. Clicked. To fit. For a moment I just stood there. That door, whatever was behind it, felt like a line I couldn't uncross. But I had come this far, and I was already standing on the ruins of a life I thought I knew. So I opened it, and I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Inside was a red folding chair, a box fan, a small table, a blanket, some half-drunk water bottles, and a shoebox taped shut with her handwriting on it. It wasn't a storage unit. It was a hideout, a place someone had been using to meet, sit, stay a while. I stepped inside, the stale air rushing past me like it had held its breath for weeks. I reached for the shoebox, peeled back the tape, and what I found made my knees go weak. Photos. Of her. Of them. Not just Vince. Different men. Different days. Smiling. Candid. Like snapshots from a secret life she had no intention of confessing. Some were older. Some were new. One was dated from last week. Same sweater she wore the night she told me not to wait up. But there was one more thing. Tucked inside the bottom of the box, under the photos, was a folded piece of paper. It was a printed map. And circled in red ink was our house. I stood in that storage unit longer than I probably should have, holding the map like it was about to start explaining itself. The red circle around our house wasn't messy or accidental. It was deliberate, bold, and drawn with such pressure that the pen had nearly torn the paper. There were small notes scribbled in the margins, too, barely legible. Times. Arrows. One marked, 10 p.m., light off. Another said, garage opens. 10:22. One even had my name. Lowell leaves at 6:35 most days. At first, I thought maybe she'd been keeping tabs on me, maybe as some twisted way to cover her tracks. But the more I stared, the more it didn't make sense. Why would she track my own schedule on a separate map, hidden in a storage unit she never mentioned? If this was about me, why keep it where I was never supposed to find it? That's when the knot in my stomach began to tighten into something worse. Because suddenly I had a thought I couldn't ignore. What if this map wasn't hers? What if it belonged to him? What if Vince or one of the others in those photos had been watching us? I left the unit without touching anything else. Locked it back up. Took only the photo I snapped of the map. My hands wouldn't stop shaking the entire drive home. I kept thinking about those times I felt watched in the yard. The weird flicker on our security cam last month. How the dog used to bark at the back fence around 6 a.m. Like clockwork, before we gave her away because she wasn't adjusting. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I wasn't just disturbed. I was nauseous. I wanted to scream at her, demand every explanation she'd never volunteered. But I didn't even know which betrayal to focus on anymore. I walked around the back of the house, my eyes scanning everything now with suspicion. Fence lines, windows, flower beds. Then I froze. There, half buried behind the shed, was something I had never noticed before. A small, black plastic case tucked beneath the corner where the soil had eroded. I pulled it out and wiped it off. A wireless trail camera. Not ours. Not installed by me. It was still on. I didn't know how to process it. Someone had been watching. For how long? And why hadn't I seen this before? I brought it inside, took it apart on the kitchen table, and popped the SD card into my laptop. My hands were trembling again. And when the folders loaded, when I saw the dates, the names of the files, the number of them, my heart felt like it skipped a beat. There were hundreds of videos. Not of our backyard. Not of our house. Of me. Leaving. Coming home. In the garage. On the porch. Standing at the sink through the kitchen window. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the video from 3 nights ago. Timestamped exactly 10:36 p.m. Where I watched myself sit in this very kitchen, alone, while just outside the frame 2 shadows stood watching me through the window. Not 1, 2. And she had said she was at her sister's that night. I replayed that clip over and over. My own blurry figure sat there inside, hunched over the kitchen table, completely unaware of the two shadows pressed against the edge of the window frame. One of them was taller, wide-shouldered, and the other smaller, feminine, unmistakably her. At one point, the taller shadow leaned closer, then pulled back, almost like he was whispering something directly into her ear. Her shape didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even hesitate. She just stood there, watching me. My blood went cold. That video was filmed just 3 nights ago. The same night she came in smelling like smoke and told me she was too tired to talk. I remember offering to rub her feet. I remember her sighing like I was the burden. And I remember brushing it off like I always did, convincing myself I was being too sensitive. But now, sitting here with undeniable proof that my own wife had stood silently in the shadows watching me while I thought she was out with family, something shifted inside me. The betrayal wasn't just physical anymore. It was psychological. They weren't hiding an affair. They were playing a game, a sick one. And I was the entertainment. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat in the living room with every light on, the front door locked, and my laptop open to the surveillance footage. I scrolled backward through weeks of files, clicking randomly, not even knowing what I was hoping to find. And then I saw something I'll never forget. A video from the previous Sunday. Broad daylight. She was in the backyard. She wasn't alone. It was Vince. He wasn't touching her. But they were close, talking like conspirators, smiling like they had nothing to fear. At one point he pointed toward the house. My house. Our house. And she nodded. Then, she did something that made my stomach turn. She handed him my spare key. The one I always kept in the kitchen drawer. The one I hadn't even thought to check. I jumped up, ran to the drawer, flung it open. Empty. I had been sleeping in this house with a stranger's key floating around God knows where. He could have been inside while I was showering, while I was working late, while I was asleep. I wanted to scream, but the noise would have meant nothing. The house felt too empty now, too wide, like my voice would just echo back at me as a reminder of how alone I actually was. That morning, around 6 a.m., her number popped up again. This time, no voicemail, just a single text. Can we talk? No explanation. No apology. Not even a hint of panic. She probably didn't know what I had found. Not yet. Not everything. So I replied, "Come alone. Leave your phone in the car." She answered with one word. "Okay." Now all I had to do was wait. But I wasn't going to confront her like a fool begging for answers. Not this time. I had every video backed up, the map printed out, the journal page scanned, and the key tucked safely in my coat pocket. I wasn't just confronting a cheating wife anymore. I was walking into something that felt bigger, dirtier, planned, and I needed to know just how far it went. She showed up exactly 27 minutes later. I watched from the upstairs window as her car rolled into the driveway like nothing had changed. Like this was just another ordinary day where she came home, and I played the part of the quiet husband waiting by the door. But I wasn't waiting by the door. I was waiting to see if she followed instructions. She did. She left her phone on the passenger seat and stepped out slowly, dressed in that same navy hoodie she always wore on low-stress days. Like it somehow made her more trustworthy. She walked up the porch steps cautiously, as if she already sensed that something about the air had shifted. I didn't rush to greet her. I waited until she rang the doorbell. Once, twice, then a third time. I opened the door. Not wide. Just enough for her to see my face and know I wasn't offering comfort. Her eyes scanned mine, searching for softness. For a hint of the man who used to melt the second she whispered, "Can we fix this?" But he was gone. Burned away. I stepped aside. Inside. Don't touch anything. She walked in, her arms folded tight across her chest, like she was cold, or maybe just bracing herself. "I didn't come to fight," she said, her voice soft. "Good," I replied, "because you're not going to win." She flinched, just a little, but it was the first crack in her mask. That fake calm she wore like armor slipped just enough for me to see the nerves underneath. I led her to the dining table where I'd laid everything out. The printed map, the photo from the storage unit, the screenshot of the video with the shadows at the window, and the spare key. She looked down at the collection of evidence, and for a second, I wondered if she'd faint. But no, she didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She smiled. A tiny, twisted thing. "I see you've been busy," she said. I blinked. That was her reaction? No denial. No panic. Just sarcasm? "Who's the second man?" I asked, pointing to the paused video on my laptop screen. She looked at the two figures, then back at me. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She hesitated, then shrugged like it was nothing. "It was just a guy Vince brought. I don't even know his name." That lie was too smooth, too practiced. I could see it in the way her eyes didn't flinch. She did know, but she wasn't going to give him up. Which meant whoever he wasn't just some extra body in a secret rendezvous. He mattered. "So what was the plan?" I asked. "Sneak around until I eventually caught you? Or were you hoping I never would?" She didn't answer. I leaned in. "You watched me through the window. Why?" Her lips pressed into a hard line. She looked at the key, then at the map, then back to me. And that's when she said something that chilled me more than anything else had. "You think this is about cheating?" she whispered. "You're still stuck on that." I stared at her, not breathing. "What is it about, then?" She didn't reply, just stood up, slowly, pushed the chair back under the table, and turned to leave. "You said you wanted to talk," I reminded her. "I did," she said as she reached the door. "But I realized there's nothing left to say." And just like that, she walked out again. But she didn't know one thing. While she had been standing there, watching me from the porch camera weeks ago, I had installed a new one in return. One she didn't know about. And earlier that morning, while waiting for her, I checked it. It had recorded something last night. Something that made everything even darker. Because she hadn't come alone. Someone had waited in the woods behind the house. The moment she left, I locked the door behind her. But this time, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel pathetic or small or like I was somehow the fool in all of this. I felt clear. I felt done. I went straight to the new camera footage, the one she didn't know about. It was pointed at the back edge of our property, aimed low, hidden in an old birdhouse I hadn't touched in years. The clip from last night started off blurry, shadows moving through the trees. But then, at 1:17 a.m., just over an hour after she left with the suitcase, a man stepped out of the woods. He didn't look toward the house. He didn't knock. He just stood there for several minutes, waiting. Then he lit a cigarette, took a few puffs, dropped it, and vanished back into the trees. That was it. No attack, no confrontation. But it told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was manipulation, control, fear. Maybe she didn't even fully understand what she'd gotten herself into. Or maybe she did and she liked it. Either way, I wasn't going to be part of it. I spent the rest of that morning gathering every piece of evidence. Videos, photos, journal scans, receipts, and handed it all off to a friend of mine who works with a private legal investigator. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. I wanted peace. And for once, I had the strength to chase it. That same day, I packed my car. I left the house. Not permanently, at least not yet, but long enough to breathe. Long enough to think. I drove out to the lake where my late father used to take me fishing as a kid. The place still looked the same. Quiet. Honest. Safe. I sat on the dock, let my legs dangle over the edge, and watched the water ripple without anyone watching me back. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. She had spent so long hiding behind lies and shadows that she forgot something important. I wasn't the one who needed to change. I was already enough. I had just been giving that truth to someone who couldn't see it. Now, I was finally giving it back to myself. There's still a divorce to finalize. There are still conversations to have. But those things no longer scare me. I've been through the darkest part, and I made it out. If you're reading this and feel like you're stuck, like you're waiting for someone to see you, let me say this, you're not invisible. You're not crazy. And you're not weak for walking away. You're just ready. Thanks for following this story to the very end. If it moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own turning point, drop a comment below and tell us about a powerful or strange moment in history that you've always found fascinating. Let's turn the pain into perspective together. You've been watching Reddit Confessions, where the truth always finds its way to the surface. See you in the next story.